Welcome back to another Explainer. So today we're tackling something that literally every single one of us deals with at some point, and that is anxiety. But we're looking at it through a very specific lens. We're breaking down a really fascinating piece of source material today that offers a structured, biblical framework for not just, managing worry, but completely transforming it into peace. So whether you're already super familiar with these texts or you're just kind of curious about the psychological and spiritual mechanics of this whole approach, we're going to look objectively at how this framework takes us from a state of fear into this really profound mindset shift. All right, let's dive right in. Here's our quick roadmap for today's Explainer. First, we'll look at the antidote to anxiety, then finding purpose in trials, moving on to biblical examples of endurance, transforming through adversity, and finally, we'll break down a guided prayer.
Starting us off with part 1, the antidote to anxiety. Look, we all experience worry. It's just part of the human condition, right? We stress out about health, relationships, jobs, whatever the future holds. But what's really interesting here is exactly how the source text frames this incredibly famous verse from Philippians. It doesn't treat it as just some gentle suggestion or a nice little platitude to make you feel better. No, it is a direct command to be anxious for nothing. And crucially, it gives us an active replacement for all that worry. So the source breaks that scripture down into this really practical 3-step formula. Step 1 is simply bringing your concerns openly to God. But step 2 is where the magic actually happens, adding thanksgiving. The text explains that gratitude is absolutely the crucial pivot here. And why is that? Because it completely shifts your focus. Instead of just kind of dwelling on what you lack or what you're afraid of, you're actively recalling past faithfulness. And by anchoring yourself in that gratitude, you unlock step 3, which is receiving a peace that the text basically describes as a fortress, literally guarding your heart and mind against all that chaos.
Moving right along to part 2, finding purpose in trials.
Okay, so once that immediate anxiety is addressed, the source actually pushes us a bit further and asks a highly counterintuitive question. How could affliction ever be good? I mean, it's just human nature to avoid pain, right? We actively pray against getting sick, getting flat tires, or going through hard times. So how on earth does this framework actually find a positive side to suffering?
Well, to answer that, the source points straight to the biblical figure of David. And it's captured perfectly in this quote from Psalm 119. David presents this massive paradox to us here. He literally says out loud, it was good for him that he had been afflicted so that he could learn God's statutes. The whole underlying logic is that without difficulties, you really wouldn't understand strength. Without sickness, you wouldn't fully grasp the concept of healing. The struggle itself actually has a profound, undeniable spiritual purpose to it. Now, the really crucial theological stance to grasp here is that trials are not a punishment. They just aren't. They aren't evidence of abandonment or proof that you're being ignored. The source argues that, much like gold is purified in a fire, our character is refined through hardship. So instead of punishments, these are actually divine invitations to grow.
And pulling from the book of James illustrates this concept even further. The text actually demands that we consider it pure joy when facing trials. The source uses a really great analogy for this, comparing spiritual challenges to physical exercise. Think about it. You don't build muscle by just sitting comfortably on the couch, right? As much as we might want to. You build muscle through resistance and through strain. Well, the source is arguing that spiritual endurance and maturity work the exact same way. They are forged directly in the fires of adversity.
Which brings us to part 3, biblical examples of endurance.
So to prove this theology actually works in practice, the source maps out a few historical case studies. It directly connects immense suffering to these overarching redemptive divine plans. First up, look at Joseph. Guy was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely imprisoned. Rough stuff. But the source points out that this wasn't just wasted suffering. It literally positioned him to save countless lives during a massive famine. Then there's Job. Job lost literally everything. His wealth, his health, his kids, the whole shebang. Yet through that completely unimaginable pain, he walked away with a vastly deeper understanding of God's sovereignty. And finally, the text points to Jesus and the suffering of the cross, presenting it as the ultimate trial that brought about the absolute ultimate purpose, which is salvation to the world. The pattern here is incredibly clear. Immense trial equals immense purpose.
Now for part 4, transforming through adversity.
Okay, so now that the text has established the why behind suffering, it starts exploring the how, as in how this actually leads to a really radical shift in perspective. On one hand, we have this immature perspective. It's highly transactional, constantly asking, why is this happening to me? And basically praying, Lord, give me more, fix this for me. But spiritual maturity, at least as defined by the source, flips that script entirely. the questions completely change. Instead of asking, why me, it turns into, what is God teaching me? And instead of praying, give me more, the prayer shifts to, Lord, how can I serve you? It is just a total 180-degree shift from self-preservation to a really purpose-driven surrender.
And to actually maintain that mature perspective, the source anchors its argument in the unchanging nature of God's goodness, using this really beautiful verse from Nahum. The main takeaway here is that God's goodness is not conditional. It's not based on your current circumstances. Even when things are incredibly difficult, and even when you have absolutely no immediate answers, this whole framework relies on the belief that there is a constant stronghold of goodness that you can always trust in.
So, what does this all mean? What's the ultimate goal here? Well, the source defines spiritual transformation as the act of emptying oneself. It's all about letting go of pride, letting go of self-reliance and all those personal desires so that you can actually be filled with divine strength. And the craziest part is, the purpose of this isn't even just to make you feel better. It's totally outward-facing. As referenced in Matthew 5:16, the real goal is for your refined life to become a living testimony to others, basically shining a light that points people toward grace and unfailing love.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, the Guided Prayers Explained.
Now, the source material actually concludes with this comprehensive 15-minute guided morning prayer. Rather than reading that whole thing to you right now, we've synthesized how it puts this entire framework into practice through 4 core components. First, it actively practices releasing control. It's just admitting that human strength really isn't enough. Second, it verbally affirms trust in God's absolute sovereignty and timing, especially when that big picture is completely hidden from us. Third, and I think this is absolutely key, it specifically seeks spiritual maturity over immediate comfort. It's not just asking for the pain to stop. And finally, it models deep gratitude in all seasons, thanking God for past provisions, even right in the middle of a current storm. It honestly perfectly mirrors the entire theological framework we've been talking about.
The ultimate plea inside that prayer is so beautifully summarized by this verse in 2 Timothy. The speaker is essentially saying, refine me, put me through the fire if you must, but empty me of myself so that I can become a vessel for honorable use, ready for every good work. It really is the ultimate acceptance that temporary hardship is a totally worthwhile trade for eternal usefulness and purpose.
And that leaves us with this final, just incredibly provocative reflection drawn straight from the heart of the source material. When you face the inevitable storms of life, and we all do, will you allow your current trials to break your spirit and push you back into anxiety? Or will you adopt this framework, shift your perspective, and allow those very struggles to be the exact tools that shape your ultimate purpose? It's a really powerful question to carry with you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.